Okay, we shall start momentarily. Okay, just a few more seconds for everybody to get prepared, including myself. And then we shall begin. Are all the candidates ready? You guys good?
Yes, we are.
Top notch. Okay. Okay, well, we'll begin then. Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon, or wherever it is, wherever you may happen to be. Thank you very much to the candidates for coming along, and you'll all have an opportunity to introduce yourselves in just a second. But before that, my name is Daniel O'Connor. I am the chair of the Student Council, and I will be chairing this hustings as well. Please note that you are being recorded at this time. This meeting will be recorded so that it can be dispersed to the rest of the student population so that they can see the messages that you have for them. So just keep that in mind in your answers, please. Okay then, we shall get into it. Sorry, that's the wrong document. Oh yeah, if I could just remind everybody, of course, that voting in the election, in this particular election, does open this week. So please keep an eye on your emails, because that should come through. The voting instructions will come through to you via email. I've just been told that it actually opens tomorrow. So keep an eye out for the voting, and hopefully this session will allow you to have an informed vote, and you can get to know the candidate that you would like to vote for. Okay then, so we'll move immediately to a Q&A session. The format is very straightforward. Candidates will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves, and then there will be a 45-minute session whereby the questions that have been received to ALSA will be asked to each of the questions in a particular order, and every candidate will have an opportunity to answer those questions. When you're asked a question, it is your decision what you do with that time, but do please attempt to answer the question, as the students would like to know the answers to them. Okay, so then, excuse me, also I should just note that the chat is, I believe, open. Yeah, the form for questions, if there's anybody in the audience just now like to ask any questions live, there is a form that is in the chat now. You can put the questions in there, and your question may be asked to the candidates, all of them, or you can also, I believe, directly ask a specific candidate a question. I believe that's correct. Okay then, so candidates will also have an opportunity for a 2-minute concluding statement at the end of this. But for the introductions, which we will begin now, the order of the intros is decided of being Radine first, followed by Blair, followed by Martina, and the reverse shall be true in the conclusion. Okay then, so I believe that we will begin then with Radine's introduction. You have 3 minutes.
Hi everyone, I'm Radine Moncrief. For those of you that don't know me, I was elected last year as the Vice President for Communities at ALSA, and I attended university in 2015, studied anthropology and philosophy, and I graduated in 2020. And so I've been actively campaigning for social justice and engaged in student politics in the university as part of the BAME Students Forum. I was the convener for the BAME Students Forum for 1.5 years. I was also actively engaged with the NUS Black Students campaign. And during my time at ALSA, I lobbied for further green practices at the university. I managed to secure meetings with the senior management team, and that eventually led to the university's commitment to divest from fossil fuels. Also through co-chairing ALSA's Equity Forum, I've tried to make student politics more accessible for students who've historically been marginalized and have had very few platforms to have their concerns shared. This year, I've been involved in securing new books for Sir Duncan Rice Library as part of LGBT History Month, and I've also laid the groundwork for decolonization campaign at the university with the Race and Racism group. And so currently now I work as a researcher for a TV production company where I'm working largely on development, but I'm also actively involved with several activist networks, including the Decolonise Education Scotland network, and I'm also trying to promote active travel and improve public transport in Scotland through Get Glasgow Moving. So I believe that as the Rector's main role is to represent and support students, this requires a candidate who's in touch with today's students' population, and being someone who's a recent graduate and someone who's worked with the student management team before, I believe I have the necessary experience to best represent students. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Radine. Okay, we shall then move on. Making sure that I'm getting this order right. Blair, please, your introduction.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank just the University of Aberdeen for this opportunity. I've drawn a little crest of the university with my whiteboard markers. I'm here right now in the UK, and I won't be able to make it up to Scotland this trip, but I do plan to come to the spring regardless of how the outcome of this comes. I'm just so grateful to be part of this experience. So much is happening at the University of Aberdeen. There's been so much progressive movement led by people like Radine, initiated by folks like Miss Tina. There's just so much work that is going on, and I'm really honored to be just a hair's breadth away from it. And so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an author, educator, and historian. My most recent book, Read This to Get Smarter, just came out at the end of October. And at the core of what I do is trying to make education accessible and sustainable. Sustainability doesn't just refer to climate change. It doesn't just refer to the environment, but the legacy of the university, the carbon footprint of the university, but also the burnout of the students and how much work is being put in and how much turnover there is for staff and how many students are withdrawing and things like this. I've been to Scotland once, and I want to preface that I'm an American. So this is a bit of a Ted Lasso situation for me, mindless comedic humor. But I think that my positioning with the university is that I have backgrounds in sociology, gender studies, intersectionality, critical race theory, and decolonization. And I think as rector, because I am so new to the space, I would really be able to prioritize the demands and the needs of the students and keeping it in line with the mission of the university. I've been doing lots of research. I have had lots of discussions with previous alumni at the university. And I think that addressing the challenges as we go through these talks of me not being based in Scotland will be something that I want to really kind of discuss as we go through the event. But all that to say, I'm a retired Black Lives Matter protester. Today I work day to day as an influencer and educator. I'm also working in television development, so very similar to what Radine's doing now. And I'm just very pleased for this experience, and I will hold it in my heart regardless of the outcome of these elections. And I thank you so much for helping me to be part of this process.
Thank you very much for your introduction, Blair. Martina, your turn for an introduction. Before we continue, if I may just ask, Martina, do you prefer Tina or Martina, just for the rest of the day? Sorry?
Martina is fine.
Martina, okay. Martina, your introduction, please.
Okay, thank you for having me. And I'm here in my former business school, so I'm right inside the University of Aberdeen this evening. So hello from Aberdeen. So my name is Martina Chikuma Ezike. So I graduated from Aberdeen University in 2009. And shortly after that, I founded the Scottish Asthma Charity, the Asthma and Allergy Foundation. I am a strong advocate for people with asthma, and I have carried out extensive work within the Scottish community, be it at the Scottish Parliament, be it working with the UK government to improve support services for people with asthma. And I'm part of the CPG on lung health, where we develop the respiratory action plans for Scotland. And shortly after I graduated, I never really left the university. I have kept in touch with the university, and I've been a part of the university. The reason is I came here to study, and I was given the chance to thrive, and my lecturers were very supportive. Even when I started the business, they were part of my mentoring team where I could come back to them for support. And by extension, I became a career advisor for students and for mentoring. And again, I founded an asthma charity, meaning medical students could volunteer and do work placement with the charity. So I have been doing all this at the background. So being a rector will just be that step forward into doing the work which I've been doing. And again, I have been a part of the university council meetings, attending the meetings, both physically here at the King's College and even online when COVID hit. So I'm very familiar. I have robust experience of how board work. I have mastered the art of mediation in that I work with businesses, funders to ensure that people with asthma are supported. So again, I'll bring on that experience into the court to see how we can continue to support students. Again, I'm local, I'm right here in Aberdeen, and I think over the years we've had rectors who, because they're not here physically, students are not really engaging with the university. And it's a shame that I have been here since morning talking to students, and about 98% didn't even know what the rector meant and the role of a rector. So my intention is to bridge that gap. And because I'm here, I don't have to travel. I just have to walk into the university, and I'm committed to being a working rector, to be here every week to ensure that students are given a voice and that their concerns are tabled before the university court. And again, I have a little bit of influencing skills, and I know how things are done within the boardroom because I work across different boards, both at the NHS, the Scottish Parliament. So I feel I have all the right attributes, the right skills. I have worked with students, so I already have that network of support within students. So if elected, I think I'll be a very strong advocate for the student, ensuring that all their concerns are addressed and properly resolved by the university leadership. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your introduction, Martina, and thank you to all the candidates for their introductions there. Okay, we shall move then to the question and answer session. Now, the question and answer session, the order will be rotated each time for every question to make it fair. So we will begin, I believe, we'll begin with Blair, first of all, and then the order thereafter will be rotated so that every candidate will have a chance to speak in different orders to ensure fairness. Okay, good. So the first question that I have for you then, Blair, sorry, I should say that it's 2 minutes to answer these questions. Okay, now hopefully that should be sufficient. Okay, 2 minutes to answer these questions. Cool. So the first question for you then, Blair. How familiar are you with the role of a rector, and what do you think the key aspects of the job are?
Thank you for that question. I'm increasingly familiar with the role of a rector. Working in different church spaces, different institutional spaces here in the United States, the role of rector isn't necessarily attributed to universities as much as it is religious institutions. I grew up between Protestant and Catholic churches. Today I'm Muslim, but in that context, it's kind of like the caretaker, similar to what I would consider to be an ombudsman if you're more familiar with corporate context. Somebody who helps to make sure that there's smooth movement between the institution and the constituents of that institution, whether they be a congregation, whether they be board members, whether they be the actual students themselves, just making sure that there's harmony and cohesion between those, because students shouldn't be forced to take on extracurricular activities simply to make sure that their school experience is a sustainable one, an equitable one, a just one. And that's often what happens. That's what happened with me when I was at university. I wish we had a position of rector, somebody that you could go to where professors aren't having to split their time between teaching and mentoring, but actually having somebody who can take care of what those students need and advocate for what those students need. I think that I may have an advantage in this position of rector, as I will really be able to, objectively hear what the students want and voice that with the, kind of not being as close to it as some of the other candidates. That could also be a disadvantage. So it's ultimately up for the students to decide.
Thank you very much, Blair. Okay, the next person shall be Martina, and I'll repeat the question for you so that you have it fresh in your mind. The question is, how familiar are you with the role of a rector, and what do you think the key aspects of the job are? You're still muted, sir.
think I should leave my mic on. The role of a rector is founded in Scottish educational system in that they were elected to represent the views of the student and to chair the university court and ensure that the proceedings are dealt with and all deliberated fairly. And over the years, the role has changed, but essentially one of the core themes of a rector is making sure that the views of the students are tabled before the university court and ensure that student concerns are addressed and resolved. And because the rector believes that the university exists because of the students, and without the student, the university does not function or exist. So it is the rector's role to ensure that students have good experiences of the university and that all their academic pursuits are being accomplished and that they have as much support as they can from the university management. And again, I think over time, the role is not essentially chairing the court. So I think for some universities, especially Aberdeen, the rector will preside over the meetings while the governor of the court would now chair the meetings. So yeah, the rector is essential in ensuring that students are supported and given all the right type of support so that they can graduate and have good experiences.
Thank you very much for that, Martina. Radine, you're up. I shall repeat the question again just to make sure that it is fresh in your mind. So the question for you is, how familiar are you with the role of a rector and what do you think the key aspects of the job are? Radine.
Thank you for the question. So I'm very familiar with the role of rector, and I've actually had the pleasure of working with the previous rector, Maggie Chapman, during my time as Vice President for Communities at ALSA. So I'm aware of the role as a representation for students to have their voice heard at University Court. And I'm also aware that the role of a rector is essential, largely because oftentimes decisions and policies made by university management do need to be made with students' considerations in mind. And many students would argue that this hasn't always been the case historically, and also even possibly even more students simply don't know what's happening at the top of university management. So I think the primary role of the rector is to establish stronger communication between university management and students and ensure that students truly feel like they have a say in how their university is run, as many of the decisions being made will affect them the most. And of course, as Martina's mentioned, the role has changed from being a role in which the rector would change, and now they preside over University Court. So yeah, I'm happy to say that I do know what the role of rector involves.
Thank you very much for that, Rad. Okay then, we will now move on to the second question, and the order will be rotated. So it will now be, and let me get this right, Martina will start this question, and then it will move on to Rad, then Blair. Okay, so Martina, the question for you. How much time should the rector spend on campus, and how much time would you plan to dedicate to the role?
I think over the years, we've had rectors that haven't really been local, and because of that, they haven't spent much time. We've heard of celebrity rectors who just come in for the fanfare of the installation and then vanish until the final term of 3 years. However, I feel a rector should be a part of the university and be here, always available. That's why, for me, I think my mantra is I'm going to be available, I'm going to be accessible, and I'm going to be approachable. And I am committed to being a working rector. I will dedicate 1 day of the week to be here. And like I said, I'm in Aberdeen, so I'm a phone call away. If the student body needs me more often than once a week, of course, I'll be here to ensure that they get all the support that they need. And again, I was a student and I received all the support I needed. So it's only a privilege that I'll be there to be able to provide that care and ensure that students have the best experiences in the university. So 1 day per week and always available when it's necessary for me to come in.
Thank you very much for that answer, Martina. Okay, Rad, for you, question, how much time should the rector spend on campus and how much time would you plan to dedicate to the role?
So one of the key pledges that I mentioned in my manifesto is that I am committed to holding fortnightly virtual surgeries. I do believe that by speaking regularly with students that this is important because it can provide regular updates about what decisions are being made, and I can also regularly feed back to university management with student concerns. I also do intend on speaking to students in person as often as I can, and I do come up to Aberdeen regularly because I am based in Glasgow currently, so it's only a train ride away. And I also have a pre-existing relationship with the current sabbaticals at ALSA, and hopefully I will continue to do so and have a strong relationship with ALSA if I'm elected as rector. I think it's important that even though as rector we are outside the university and outside ALSA, that still have a good working relationship with all the existing student representative services at the university, and so providing students with like several avenues of support, including myself as rector, as well as the ALSA sabbatical officers and the representative services at university. It means that all of student concerns are being represented in different ways. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Radine. Finally, Blair, question for you, so it's fresh in your mind. How much time should the rector spend on campus and how much time would you plan to dedicate to the role?
So I ultimately think this has to be a decision that sits with the students. I was shaking my head when Martina was discussing a celebrity rector, because it reminds me of growing up in Los Angeles, and we would always have people who wanted to come and talk to the kids and would claim to come and be present as mentors and then would disappear. And it's a disappointing thing, and it's something that's a disservice to the institution as well as the student body. So that said, I can't promise to be there physically 1 day a week. I can promise to be there at least once a month if I take this position, and I'll make sure to be present in that role. I also speak to, I had calculated it specifically to let you all know this, I speak to 600 people every week through Instagram, through email. I'm a very prolific communicator, too prolific, some might say. I'm very talkative, in other words. And so I'll be, a text away, a WhatsApp away, an email away, present to do, meetings over email. And I think that the interesting thing there might be that students can take a more active and independent role in doing this work. But ultimately, I think that we have a great array and diversity of availabilities, and it'll be good for the students to kind of dictate what they want in a rector, whether it's somebody who's able to be there once a week, whether it's somebody who can be there just a train ride away, or somebody who's a plane away but is very available over email, which I'm sure all of us can do as well. But I think that it must be someone who isn't just there to show up for events, but somebody who's there like kind of ever present, because it would be a disservice to the institution for somebody to just fly in, fly out, and never communicate otherwise, because it has to be an active and ongoing role. I think that's been one of the changes that's happened with the position of rector, is that it's kind of increasingly hands-on. And one of the benefits of this global pandemic that we've had is an increase in digital communications.
Thank you very much, Blair. Okay, we shall now take a question from a member of the audience. One question or a couple of questions have just come in. So we shall start with Radine, and I will read the question to you now. Will you commit to standing with the Universities and Colleges Union in their actions against the university management? Radine.
So that's a good question. So historically, in the past, a lot of students have rallied in support of the UCU campaigns and action against the university. I think ultimately this is a decision that would have to be made by students themselves, and I think as part of that I will support whatever students wish the outcome to be. And I think Having been someone that has attended and rallied in support of UCU before, I'm aware of how that works and how that will affect students, and hopefully students will be able to make an informed decision to do so, because it does also affect their studies, and it does also affect the way that the university and students communicate with one another. But yeah, I would ensure that the process in which that's done is one that's done fairly, and that students have the best possible outcome out of it.
Thank you, Radine. Okay, Blair, I shall reiterate the question. Will you commit to standing with the Universities and Colleges Union in their actions against the university management?
There we go, unmuted. One of my backgrounds as an organizer has been in labor organizing. And I think that the context of unions in the United States and of course in the UK is going to be completely different, specifically as it relates to Scotland and Aberdeen. And so I think taking that into consideration, I don't think that it's in organizing terms always the best to stand against the people who are your stakeholders. If that's the end result and that's what you need to move forward and that's what the students want, then absolutely. However, I think that any action that's taken must be in the consideration that if you are trying to improve an institution, you're never against that institution. You're in fact with it. And you might be more dedicated to somebody who's complacent and unconcerned about what the direction of that institution takes. So I think that standing against might need to be reframed to pushing that institution to live its values and doing it in a way that has the least harm on the students, because in any organizing action, if you're looking at the people who have the least power in the structure of who's the stakeholder, who's the decision maker, who's the constituent, who is the owner, who's the worker even, you want to make sure that the most vulnerable people are the most protected. And so I think the position of rector would allow me to be able to use my advocacy skills in this more formal setting, something that I'm very familiar with doing. I started out with labor organizing and also on-campus organizing, but making sure that when we say stand against, it's not to say we're trying to dismantle anything, but that we're trying to improve. And if we are dismantling, it's a system of harm and replacing it with one that is sustainable and beneficial, but doing it very delicately and with the old, American saying, with a scalpel, not with a hatchet.
Thank you very much for your answer, Blair. Martina, I will give you the question again. Will you commit to standing with the Universities and Colleges Union in their actions against the university management?
I did mention in my opening speech that I'm very good at mediation. So in this case, I will engage both parties and ensure that we reach a resolution without conflict, because the university management are there to make decisions to move the institution forward. And also sometimes students do want actions to be taken in certain areas, but let's not forget that in everything, mediation and dialogue always goes against every other thing. So I would say, as a rector, I'll work with the management, I'll work with the student, I'll mediate and ensure that a desired outcome is reached without any sort of conflict.
Thank you very much. Okay. We shall move on then. Give me a second to bring up the questions. Sorry, thank you for your answer there, Martina, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I believe that you are up again, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry.
Yeah, it should be me. I think so.
Yeah. Sorry, my mistake there. Okay.
No, that's okay.
This question is targeted at assessing the experience of all of the candidates. So Martina, the question for you is, what is your previous experience with representing student voices, and how will you ensure that all student voices are heard? So what's your previous experience with representing student voices, and how will you ensure that all student voices are heard?
In my first degree, I was part of the university's student union government, and I studied sociology. So obviously, we are all social beings, and we like representing people and raising issues that ought to be raised. So I have that experience. However, in my professional life, everything I do on a daily basis is advocacy, because I run an asthma charity, and I am like in the middle, getting money from funders and ensuring that people with asthma get the support. So that is representing their voices and making sure that it's being heard loud and clear and their concerns addressed both by the government, by the healthcare boards, and by service providers, even down to the GPs. So within the university, as an MBA student, obviously I was part of the student coordinating the tutorials, and every consent we had during my time in terms of placement for gaining additional skills out of the university, I took that on board to our head of business school to ensure that those concerns were raised. So I have done a bit of intervention. However, as a rector, I will take that forward and take my management skills and experience I've gained out with the university and out with chairing on and leading students to bring all that together to ensure that they are equally and fairly represented in the university's management.
Thank you very much for your answer, Martina. Okay, we shall move on then. We'll go to Radine, and I will repeat the question for you. I'm flicking through so many documents right now. Okay, so Radine, what is your previous experience with representing student voices, and how will you ensure that all student voices are heard?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in my introduction, I've been involved with a lot of representational work as part of my time at the University of Aberdeen. So I was a part of the NUS Black Students Campaign nationally, which involved a national decolonisation campaign. It's also involved in helping establish the NUS Mixed Media Decolonisation Library. And then more locally, as Vice President for Communities at ALSA, I was largely responsible for representing student interests in the context of the environment and the local community. So helped lobby for further green practices, helped lobby particularly for the commitment to divest from fossil fuels, which ultimately ended up to be very successful. And also as part of my role, I was co-chairing the Equity Forum alongside the student president, and that involved liaising with students who are part of the LGBTQ plus Students Forum, the BAME Students Forum, Trans Students Forum, Disabled Students Forum, and International Students Forum. And through that, I was able to actively promote the interests of many students that have historically been marginalized and have had very few platforms to have their concerns heard. And I've consistently tried to ensure that it's these groups of students that haven't had their voices heard for so long get involved in student politics and actually make a difference in terms of the way that our student services have been run, how university management have been handling systemic racism, systemic homophobia and transphobia, and a lot of several different issues. And I feel like with this varied experience, I've been able to hopefully foster a community where the groundwork has been laid for people to feel a lot more empowered to be able to speak out, and that should hopefully mean that more students will feel represented than ever before at the university.
Bang on time there, Red. Good job. Okay, Blair, finally, I'll repeat the question for you again. What is your previous experience with representing student voice, and how will you ensure that all student voices are heard?
So my experience as a student organizer was with an extremely hostile university administration in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which is predominantly conservative, predominantly white. And when I say hostile, I mean getting death threats. I mean, really having to go through a lot of the less savory or completely unsavory aspects of organizing. So I think that I'm prepared to do what is necessary, but doing it at University of Aberdeen in a far less hostile environment will be refreshing. But there always is still work to be done. As a Black, bisexual, Muslim woman, my very identities sitting at so many different intersections means that I'm always cognizant of the different work that needs to be done in different communities. Having worked in that type of hostile organizing environment, it's also remembering not to alienate the institution to try to make things move forward. That doesn't mean, kind of listening to or going with the flow or going along to get along, but standing firm in your values and trying to get to an understanding where there can be a shared outcome. through organizing, through direct conversations. Today I lead different discussion groups on how to have tough conversations, trying to get people to understand that until you're in a discussion place where one person has decided to dehumanize you, there's always momentum that can be had forward. Not seeing the other side of an argument where somebody's trying to dehumanize you, but trying to use people's values to get them to a place of understanding. Being at LSU, Louisiana State University, this meant changing policy, even in that really conservative environment, to have better relationships with the university police on campus and students on campus, having name change policies where you could have your gender affirmed in having your name changed to what you would like to be called rather than what might appear on legal documentation, and also having inclusive dormitories instead of having a very gender binary setup. So even in those types of environments, moving forward in that manner. Since then, I have worked with Black Lives Matter and have since retired, working in more.
To finish up there, yeah.
Oh, sorry. No worries. So long story short, since then, I've been doing advocacy in different roles, and so I definitely will dedicate my time to making sure all voices are heard.
Okay, thank you, Blair. Okay, we shall move on then to another question that has just come in from the audience, and we will start. Sorry, let me get this right. Again, I believe that we're going to start with Radine now. Okay, Radine, for you. Is that correct? Sorry, is that, just let me make sure. Is that correct, yeah?
I think it should be Blair.
I think it should be Blair as well, yeah, sorry about that. Sorry, I'm really struggling with all these documents I've got open. Excuse me, yeah, sorry, Blair. For you, how do you intend on lobbying the university for better and more affordable student accommodation?
So this goes right into the end of my last answer that went over time, I apologize. Is I used to be a lobbyist. I used to work with Heineken in the USA, and it was around beer. So nothing to, everyone can kind of agree with beer and responsible drinking and such. But having that direct experience with lobbying, also having a background in advocacy, looking at things like class, and also looking at ways to mediate and bring people together, whether it's through organizing, whether it's through policy change, whether it's through diplomacy, through conversations, through having policy demonstrated. I believe that storytelling can be an immensely powerful movement force. I'm actually mentoring presently students who are protesting the conditions at Howard University in Washington, D.C. right now about student housing. So being a rector at a university will allow me to do what I'm already doing, which is mentoring students across the country to move forward with policy change, and doing it in ways where we're using data sets, we're using storytelling, we're using different types of advocacy, and only escalating when it is clear that a stakeholder is not willing to make a change, or determining what that stakeholder needs to hear and what they need to do in order to move forward with that change. Because escalation and conflict is not the goal. I know when people hear Black Lives Matter, sometimes they're like, ooh, lots of immediately rioting. Absolutely not. It's really about making change and doing what is necessary to get the conditions to shift. So it's something I'm actually working on right now, and hopefully the institution of University of Aberdeen will be more receptive. But I think the fact that we have such an amazing and diverse candidate pool for the position of rector means that change will happen regardless of who is in that position.
Okay, thank you very much, Blair. Okay, then I will repeat the question. So that for your round, Martina, I will repeat the question for you. And the question is, how do you intend on lobbying the university for better and more affordable student accommodation?
I think, first of all, I'll look at the current plans and the issues that the students are facing, and then have a conversation with the university to see how that can be deliberated upon. In my field of work, I work along the council to see how families battling polycontrolled asthma can be moved onto a more suitable accommodation. And I've happened to work with a lot of housing associations and other private leasing agents. So I have already the negotiating skills that I've gained doing this work with them. So I think, first of all, this has to be communicated before the university, and speaking with students to see what their concerns are, because whatever student needs need to be taken to the court to be deliberated. So if students have said the housing and the conditions and the rents or the cost needs to be changed, then I have to take that forward to the university and ensure that that is communicated first of all, and then the university can make decisions. And I think the university's first purpose is a center of teaching and learning where students should be equipped. And if the university accommodation is not suitable or maybe expensive or in any way, I think that communication and that conversations will need to be had first of all. And again, every deliberation will always have good outcomes. And I feel with the students at the center, good decisions will be made to ensure that students are given every support that they need. And the university is not ignorant that COVID has affected a lot of families, both in finances and in terms of everything that the student needs. So I think that conversation will be, the communication will be had in first, and then everything will be deliberated upon. And it's my role to ensure that that is done accordingly and in the best interest of the students.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer, Martina. Radine, for you, the question is, 2 seconds, let me just get back up so I can read it word for word. How do you intend on lobbying the university for better and more affordable student accommodation?
Yeah, so as someone who has been involved in Cut the Rent campaign in the past, I'm well aware of the statistics, and according to the NUS, that they found that both university-owned and private sector student accommodation fails the needs of many students, including disabled students in particular. And I'm aware that as in the University of Aberdeen, we have one of the smallest percentages of students from widening access schemes in the country. And I think one of the key things is from what I've heard from a number of students, there's a serious problem with the lack of accessible purpose-built student accommodation, and that includes university halls of residence and private halls of residence. And I think one of the key things that I would want to establish with the university is obviously see what their current policies are, but also ensure that it's always students' needs that are the priority, and it's they prioritize the health and well-being of students before the profit motive, because I think that's been one of the key issues. This is something that I would be wanting to discuss with students to further ensure that there is a way that this can be mediated in a way that doesn't involve students having to risk their health and well-being in order to get their point heard and put across.
Thank you very much for that, Radine. Okay, we shall now go to, and I've now written this down so that we're going to make sure that we get this right from now on. Martina, is your question, and the question is once again to assess the experience of the candidates, and the question is, what is your connection to Aberdeen University, and what makes you think you can represent best the students' interests? So what makes you think that you can represent the students' interests the best?
So my connection to the university, I graduated here in 2009. And ever since I graduated, I haven't left, have been a part of the university. I have been involved with mentoring students and providing support. Have been involved with the medical student, providing work experience and placement for them to bring their learning into practice by working directly with families living with asthma. And I have attended meetings of the court, have attended the general council meetings, both in person and online. So I have the connection already. I have always been here. I haven't really left, have been a part of the university, have come in to give talks to students to inspire and encourage them. There was a time when I was called to say, students feel if you come into the university, you have a one path to career. And I was called to talk about that. And I said, you know, I was working in the oil and gas, but after graduating, my career path completely changed. So I have been a part coming in to support students, to encourage, to mentor, and to provide advice. And being a rector will just be a step forward to ensure that their voices are heard and all the support that they need is being provided.
Thank you very much, Martina, for your answer. Okay, we shall then go to Radine, and I shall read the question again to you. What is your connection to Aberdeen University, and what makes you think you can represent best the students' interests?
Thank you. So, like Martina, I'm also a graduate of the university. I graduated in 2020, so in the middle of the first lockdown, which I'm still waiting on my graduation ceremony. But I've been heavily involved with the university, both being a student myself. I loved being a student at the university, but that did come with a lot of challenges, particularly as being someone from a working class background, being Black and Asian, being someone who is also bisexual. Like this led to a lot of different issues arising at the university, and I think that there's so much that can still be done in the infrastructure to hopefully ensure that students that were in a similar situation that I was in can hopefully have a much more fruitful experience that isn't marred by a lot of the bureaucracy, a lot of the lack of communication, and seeming lack of representation of student needs at the university. And I believe that because of my direct experience being part of the university and then later becoming a representative for students as part of ALSA, I believe that makes me the best candidate suited to representing students and their needs.
Okay, Radine, thank you very much for your answer. We shall then go to Blair, and I will once again read out the question. What is your connection to Aberdeen University, and what makes you think you can represent best the students' interests?
So my connection to, to Aberdeen is having my Scottish heritage, and also it being a place of learning. I may not have, formally attended the university, but I've been speaking to so many alumni about what they loved about the university, what they wish would change, doing that work actively and proactively. I will admit that I'm the least connected out of all of the candidates, because that's the truth. But I also think that I'm somebody who easily fits into new situations, being somebody who is constantly feeling like, marginalized and outcast. I'm very dedicated to creating spaces of inclusion and acceptance wherever I go. And that includes me traveling across the country to go to school in Louisiana, being from Los Angeles, working with folks from international backgrounds, trying to understand people where they are. I'm drawn to it because it's a place of learning. When I saw this opportunity in my inbox, I jumped at it because any opportunity to make a space improved or better is something that I'm quite dedicated to, especially now that I'm between writing books and have more time to commit to this, to kind of give of myself in a new way, in a new place. And that's really exciting for me. But it's a place of learning. It's a place that will allow me to explore the roots of my Scottish heritage, and really figure out ways to do this intentional work. But I feel connected to all places of learning because, one of my mottos is learning is a blessing, and universities need to acknowledge the vulnerability that comes with that. And I hope to fortify the relationships between students and the university itself.
Thank you very much, Blair. Okay, thank you all for your answers on that one. So the next question that will be taken is again from the audience. I'll preface this question with a slight bit of information for all candidates that it is not currently permissible for students to run in this election that you are currently running in. Okay, so as long as you know that, we will now move forward with a question, and the question shall first be asked to Radine. And the question is, you may be aware that Student Council recently passed a motion to allow students to run for Rector. Do you support the aim of this motion?
Thanks, Daniel. And yes, I am aware of that. So I am aware that it was also a very close vote, and so won by quite a margin. And I do think that, again, Student Council is also a place where students have their voice heard. And if that's the will of the students, then that is something that should be respected. I think one of the key things is understanding if a student wants to run in the future, that they have a good understanding of what the role of Rector entails and how that is in relation to one, them being a student themselves, and also how that pertains to University Court, because obviously as the role of the rector does entail that the person involved is a separate entity from the university and also themselves. That's something that they need to be very clear on. But again, this is something that I would hopefully work with the student body to address. And if there was a student candidate in future elections, that they are just fully aware of what the process is, what being a rector entails, and how they can best serve the university in that role.
Thank you very much, Radine. We shall now go to Blair, and I will repeat the question once again for your benefit. You may be aware that the Student Council recently passed a motion to allow students to run for rector. Do you support the aim of this motion, Blair?
Thank you. And I am aware one of my followers is actually a present student and informed me about some of the current goings on, which I really appreciate, as I did kind of an open call for that information as I did my own research. This is something that I've been advocating for at University of Utah, at Utah State University, at University of Wisconsin, on their various campuses. One of the things I do as a public speaker and educator is meet with students prior to giving my speeches, because I think that it's important to localize the different discussions. But something that was returned to again and again was the idea, not for position of rector, because that's not really common in the US, but for the board of directors of a university to also have a student. But with this, we have to consider the amount of time that's going into it. It would be an activity that's outside of, it'd be extracurricular. And I think that because it is something that is so time consuming, it would have to come with some sort of stipend, looking at the ethics of all of those things involved, but something to also reward the student, because it can't just be for the prestige of the position if it's a student doing that work, because you're going to get direct insights from the student. With the position of rector being somebody who's not currently a student, you can go and speak with the students, you can consult with them, but they're not having to do that work day to day. So I think that that would absolutely be excellent. I think that students are well equipped with being able to represent themselves and do it in more formal manners. You'd have to find and create systems to make them impartial to not one certain thing, but also you'd have to have something which is already an issue with the position of rector, making sure that the work is being passed on position by position, to make sure that there's a legacy, which is something that often is a struggle with student-led organizations, for example. But this is something that in the United States that we're working very hard on to do nationally. And I think it would be great to have it with the position of rector here at the university.
Thank you very much, Blair. Finally, Martina, your question is, you may be aware that the Student Council recently passed a motion to allow students to run for rector. Do you support the aim of this motion?
I believe in inclusion, and that if that's the resolution students have passed, then I think it should be respected. That being said, I think being a rector is all about experience and capability. So if a student feels they have the right set of skills to be able to do that, I would say they should go for it. But however, they should know that you have to balance responsibility and the commitment to being a student, which is very tasking. So I don't know how that would work, because I was an MBA student and my course was very demanding. I literally had a social life. I wouldn't want to combine that with doing something else. But if the student think they can balance the responsibility and still achieve their degree, for which that was the first purpose for which they got admitted in the university, I think they should go ahead. However, I think balancing both responsibility is what should be at the fore without one suffering.
Thank you very much, Martina, for your answer. Okay, that concludes that question. The next set of questions, or the next question at least, is on the current pressing issues in the questions that have been sent forward to me here. So we will start with Blair. And the question for you, Blair, is what do you think is the most important issue for students right now?
There you go. I think based on, and this is going to be a horrible pun, the climate of the current student body, it's going to be around climate. I think that's a big preoccupation of students at the University of Aberdeen, particularly as it relates to recent activism efforts. I think that that is something that underpins all of the work that's going on. Like I said in my platform, the updated manifesto that I sent, talking about sustainability, not just for the planet, but also for students, because when students are experiencing this, what is often discussed as climate anxiety, climate fatigue, climate, these different anxieties, that is really difficult when you're trying to do your studies. And so this is something that Radine has spoken about, being, being an advocacy around. But I also think that the restrictions around COVID and how that's affected people's families is front of mind for people. If people's basic needs are not met, then they can't achieve those things like finishing a degree program, like Martina was discussing. So I think looking at that kind of holistically, what does it mean for the students at large, for the student body, to be able to have their needs met so that they can actually excel, think beyond themselves, have that social life, come back into dealing with day-to-day life, dealing with their studies, and then being able to be more committed to other aspects of student life. Those are the things that need to be met. But you can kind of see what's going on if you scroll the little University of Aberdeen hashtags on Instagram or on Twitter, which I've been doing on my flight from LA to the UK.
Okay, thank you very much, Blair. Okay, so next up is Martina, and I will ask the question again. The question is, what do you think is the most important issue for the students right now?
The most important issue is welfare and support, and this should be at the forefront of any representation. My manifesto was led by the views of the student because I had conversations with students in medical school, business school, the student union body, the ALSA, and their chief executive, and student in law and divinity and even engineering. And all the cases they presented were around mental health because of the impact of COVID. Human beings were not created to live in isolation, and that has really, really caused a huge impact on students. I remember during COVID, I was called by the university to befriend some students who were locked in here because of COVID and they couldn't go home. I was grateful to be part of that movement, mentoring a student and being there for them. However, the other thing has been safety of coming back to face-to-face learning, employability skills, and climate change. So essentially, we have been anchoring our hopes on our leaders during the COP26 to say they should make decisions that will impact on our environment. But let's not forget that we all have a duty to contribute and to our environment and ensure that our carbon footprints are reduced. So given that we are all candidates and the other ones are, for one, will have to fly all the way to Aberdeen, and the other will have to use buses and trains. So it's left for the student to decide, if you have to reduce your carbon footprint, why not start from now? I live in Aberdeen. I can only walk into the university with 0 emission, while somebody else will have to use tons of flights or trains and buses. So again, the discussion is about climate change, about saving the environment. So I think given all that we have, my carbon emission of being a rector and supporting the student is 0. So that is up to you to make a decision on how you want to save your planet. But essentially, I think effective representation starts with student welfare, and that welfare is in terms of safety in face-to-face learning, decent accommodation and affordable accommodation. Their learning environments are conducive, and that the lectures
Martina.
And the lectures are flexibly enough for them to continue to attend. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry for interrupting. Okay. Sorry, I just muted myself again there accidentally. Okay, so Radine, I will get the question back up for you. Final time round for this one. What do you think is the most important issue for students right now? Radine.
Yeah, so having spoken to a number of current students, I believe that COVID and the pandemic is still a major overarching issue that's had a knock-on effect on all aspects of student life, such as mental health, extracurricular activities, ability to travel, and the obvious safety of returning to face-to-face activity. I think that is vital that policies regarding mental health provisions are monitored and improved to highlight this fact, and students are offered several avenues of support by the university. I think that also last year's no detriment policy is something that I'd be keen on reviewing and advancing, as the pandemic is far from over and course grades will continue to be affected. And also, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, there's been an increase in racist abuse and hate crimes, particularly targeted towards East and Southeast Asian students. And I don't believe that the current systems in place at the university have been effective enough at addressing racism on campus. And it's vital that we see them improved. So I think that's something that I think is a major issue that's been affected. And of course, as both Blair and Martina have mentioned, climate change is something that is going to be at the forefront of people's minds, particularly because of COP having just finished. I was involved in some of the demonstrations last week in Glasgow, so I'm very well aware of students nationally and how they feel about the climate emergency and how that it's imperative that an institution such as university does its part to ensure that we are working towards a sustainable environment. And I'd be looking to encourage student participation in the newly formed North East Scotland Climate Action Network, which I've been in contact with in the past in my role as VP for Communities at ALSA. So I'd be very keen on helping provide support on existing climate action work that's already happening at the university.
Bang on time again, top notch. Okay, thank you, Radim, for that answer. If I'm not mistaken, we now go to Martina again. And the question is, what do you think could be improved at the University of Aberdeen, and what priorities, there's a mistake in this question, let me try again. What do you think could be improved at the University of Aberdeen, and what would you prioritize as the first thing you'd like to change?
I think having spoken to students across different schools, one of the key issues is support for mental health. And I think the first thing I would like to be reviewed is the counseling services to ensure it's fit for purpose, because we all know that COVID happened and a lot of services will need to be reviewed. And I think, first off, I would like the counseling services to be reviewed so that students are given the right set of support. I spoke with a student who said that during the lockdown that she was literally speaking with her clothes, that she thought she was losing her mind as she didn't have any ties back home. So I think that, again, communication, accommodation, and inclusiveness. So if, as a university, we must truly be international, then we have to address issues of inclusion. We have to address issues of mental health, which is a student cannot learn if they are not mentally stable. And again, I've worked with over 200 young people, helping them move into jobs. And one of the recurring themes among young people is anxiety, depression, and social withdrawal. And COVID has made that worse. So I think mental health is one of the key things that we should be focusing on so that our students can learn and achieve and go back into the world, get good jobs, and make a difference.
Thank you very much for that, Martina. Okay, next up, Radine. I will repeat the question. Sorry, I should probably rewrite this out now, but what do you think could be improved at the University of Aberdeen, and what would you prioritize as the first thing you'd like to change?
So I think Martina has expressed very well a lot of the sentiment that's currently happening within the university, and I think mental health is a vital aspect that I do think needs to see like widespread reform potentially in terms of the way it's the way it's been approached in terms of how accessible it is, and in the context of COVID right now. I think having spoken to a number of different students, it's quite clear that some of the services that are currently provided are not necessarily fit for purpose in terms of different students. So marginalized students when dealing with racism or racial abuse on campus, disabled students having to deal with ableism on campus as well. And also students are not necessarily aware of alternative support services that they could be receiving. So some of the support services from ALSA and some of the support service from their peers, which are such as Nightline. And I think one of the big things that I'd like to see improved is the outreach that the university offers, as well as aftercare, so that it's not just the university promoting promoting awareness, but also ensuring that aftercare is more thorough, so that students are fully aware that they'll be able to seek and continue to seek help even after they've visited the counselling service.
Thank you very much for your answer there, Radine. Okay, Blair, finally, the question for you again is, what do you think could be improved at the University of Aberdeen, and what would you prioritise as the first thing you'd like to change?
I think that one of the first things that I think needs to change at the University of Aberdeen is compassion and understanding. Because it's one thing to shift the mental health infrastructure, it's another thing to, as that's in process, encourage faculty and staff to create, alleviation to the consequences of, or to the causes of mental health, to address those consequences. Things like increased understanding for people's different situations, different ways of not just attacking a single problem, but also looking at ways to alleviate the rippling effects of it. Things looking at carbon offsetting, things like lobbying students to shift corporations whose real consequence of climate change, not individuals flying on a plane or going on a train, but actual collective action, looking at corporations, shifting these different things, having more of a comprehensive kind of globalist view for the changes that can be made. I think having somebody who's coming from an international context, such as myself, will help the University of Aberdeen be positioned as a leader in the university space, not just something that's localized to Scotland, but really being a leader in what it looks like to have a circular, and sustainable campus environment, where maybe everything from the food that is grown to the food waste that is created, to the carbon offsetting that is happening, the trees that are being planted, to sustainability and accessibility for disabled students. What does it look like for distance learning to be expanded to people in the international realm so that they can also participate at University of Aberdeen? So these things must be looked at collectively and shifted, but it's not just something that has to happen with policy. It can also be cultural change, but it all comes down to a shift in compassion and understanding. And that's something that is my entire mission, and something that I'd be happy to bring to the University of Aberdeen.
Okay, thank you very much, Blair. Finally, Martina, I'll repeat the question once again. What do you think could be improved at the University of Aberdeen, and what would you prioritise as the first thing you'd hope to change?
I thought that was the question you just asked. Are you repeating the same
sorry,
question?
I've got the order wrong there. Sorry, I've just asked that again. Yeah, so that question is now concluded, isn't it? Yeah, my mistake. Okay.
And again, I was not supposed to be the first because I went first.
No, you're quite right. Radine is first. Sorry, that's my mistake. I thought writing it down would change everything, but there you go. Okay. Right then. So starting again with Radine. And the question is on this one. This is a bit of a big one, so give me a second on this one. For you, Radine, the university has an issue with transparency, for example, when it comes to divulging important information affecting the safety of students and staff. What will you do to make sure that the university is transparent, whether it comes to awarding contracts or properly investigating cases of assault? Radine.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think that's one of the key pledges in my manifesto, is to foster a community where transparency is at the forefront. I think that it's very apparent that as a student, you can also often feel like that decisions are made at a senior level are done with very little input from students, or with students not having the full understanding of what the implications are, and even though it affects students the most. I think historically, particularly pertaining to sexual violence and assault on campus, unfortunately, a lot of the work being done has had to be led and raised by students, when really it should be the university taking initiative. But we do have currently student-led groups such as CASE that have been doing amazing work. But again, this is something that the university really should be highlighting themselves and should be really tackling to solve, without the need for students having to divulge their own trauma in order for their difference to be made. I think one of the key things is that working really closely with ALSA sabbatical officers and also with senior management team will be essential to ensuring that there is an infrastructure or there is plans underway that are looking to improve services for students so that they can feel like they are able to report if there's sexual violence happening on campus. And also there should be many steps taken if there are serious allegations being made, because it's something that the university shouldn't take lightly and also shouldn't shy away from, because this is something that is happening not just at this university, but as a whole in different university institutions. So that would be something that I would be really keen on speaking to students and also the senior management team in addressing.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for that one, Radine. Okay, we shall now go to Blair again, and I'll repeat the question for you once again because it's a bit of a long-winded one. So stick with me. But for you, Blair, the university has an issue with transparency. For example, when it comes to divulging important information affecting the safety of students and staff. What will you do to make sure that the university is transparent whether it comes to awarding contracts or properly investigating cases of assault? Blair.
I would say that the unfortunate thing is that this isn't exclusive to University of Aberdeen, as Radine was just saying. This is something that is part of our societies, and our institutions, including academic institutions, are pillars of society. And so it's something that must be redressed thoroughly. And this is another opportunity for University of Aberdeen to not just be kind of confined to the restrictions of Scotland or even the larger UK, but to be kind of a global leader. This is work that's been done, that I've been doing in the United States, where upon hearing that campus police at Louisiana State University reported that 2 assaults had happened, that they felt, oh, we're a leader. But that's at a 160-year-old institution. University of Aberdeen is 526 years old, according to its founding. This is something that is not a new issue, and it's something that has to be addressed as times change, and it has to be a shift in values. Those values are as they're declared in the mission statement of the university, to protect students, to uplift students, and to include. And so how are we not living those values? So we have to look critically and think about these different things. But it doesn't just end and begin with sexual violence. It begins with small things, the microaggressions, the ways that sexism might be reinforced in different dynamics and discussions within the university context. And this is something that I'm very familiar with, working with the Obama White House during their initiatives that were led by current President Joe Biden, and something that I would be pleased to adapt and work with students to fortify their current efforts. But it doesn't just begin and end with, those moments of sexual violence, but actually looking at the ways that that might be entrenched, whether it's the local bars, whether it's on-campus life, and looking at how that can be redressed so that the University of Aberdeen can live its values, which I know are to protect all students, not only from harassment and sexual violence, but from the harms that society wants to perpetuate onto them rather.
Thank you very much for that answer, Blair. Okay, Martina, to finish off this round, I will read the question once again. Okay, for you, Martina, the university has an issue with transparency, for example, when it comes to divulging important information affecting the safety of students and staff. What will you do to try and make sure that the university is transparent, whether it comes to awarding contracts or properly investigating cases of assault?
I think student safety is non-negotiable. They have a right to be safe where they study, where they live, and where they socialize. And I do know that information divulgence is something that is very common with public bodies. And I believe that the relevant information should be divulged accordingly, and students need to be aware of what's going on within the community. And as a university, I think we have a right to ensure that students are safe. And as your rector, I will ensure that any issues of assault or discrimination is dealt with and addressed appropriately.
Okay, thank you very much, Martina, for that answer. Okay, this brings us to the final round, this is the final question because we've had just over an hour of questioning at this point. So congratulations to all the candidates for making it this far. We shall have the last question, and I have selected this particularly to be the last question. We are starting with Blair. I hope I've got this one right. Why are you the best candidate to be the new rector for the University of Aberdeen? Blair?
I think that I am cognizant that I might not be the best candidate. And I think that's important when we're looking at any election for people to consider that the other candidates that are running with them might be the best option, that the decision doesn't lie with us, that we can't make that decision for these students because we can't infantilize students or make them feel as though we need to hover over them and control every decision they make, but really leave it with students and empower them to make that best decision. I think that if I'm rector, however, I will be able to amplify kind of the position of University of Aberdeen, not only making it an intentional connection to the community, which is something that universities often struggle with the students, with the faculty, with the staff, with the people who are the custodians of the university, and amplifying that to be kind of the beacon on a hill, to use more American cliches, to be viewed as a university that others aspire to be, not because of historical prestige or keeping people out, but welcoming people in and really shifting the tides of what University of Aberdeen has been and can be for the next 526 years. As a historian, as an activist, as a writer, as somebody who is right online with the University of Aberdeen students, able to communicate with them where they already are, I believe that I would be a worthwhile candidate to consider. And I may not be the best one, but I think my awareness of that is important.
Thank you very much for that answer, Blair. Okay, we shall then move on to Martina. Making sure we're getting this right. Okay, Martina, why are you the best candidate to be the new rector for the University of Aberdeen, Martina?
I believe everyone here tonight can deliver if provided the opportunity. I'm a former student of the university. I have the relevant, influential, and negotiation skills. I am local, and I've continued to support student community via my charity and via the work that I do, mentoring and supporting students. Given the chance as a rector, I will just take a step further and ensuring that student voices are heard loud and clear by those in position of authority, which is the university court.
Okay, thank you very much, Martina. Radine, why do you think that you're the best candidate to be the rector?
Well, firstly, I want to take the opportunity to say that regardless who students ultimately vote for, I believe that it's great to see such a strong candidates list this year, and I think Blair and Martina will make fantastic rectors. I do believe that ultimately what the university needs is someone who is in touch with today's current student population, particularly in Aberdeen, and as someone who has graduated recently and is still close to a lot of the student body and has worked with the student body previously, that I have the relevant experience and understanding of how university administration works. And I believe that because I have the necessary experience to represent students, this will allow me to make further strides in hopefully improving the university and hopefully ensuring that students have the best possible experience out of their time as a student.
Thank you very much for your answer there, Radine. Okay, that concludes the questions section. We shall now allow the candidates to provide a quick 2-minute, if you require it, final statement on your candidacy and the entire campaign as a whole, if you like. Anything that you'd like to say as a final statement, and we will begin with Martina.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really happy to be here, and it's such an honor to have taken part in the process. Like I did say, I am local, so I'm here available, accessible, and reachable. And I have great experience working across different boards. I have a strong voice, both for people with asthma across Scotland, and even for women, as I have advocated for them to receive better services at the maternity hospital. I have been working with students over the years since I graduated. They've never been a month past that I haven't done something in connection with the university. My profile is well on the alumni page on the university website to tell you how interactive and connected I have remained with the university. So given the opportunity, I think I'll be able to represent students, ensure that their voices are heard loud and clear, and any issues they raise is being addressed and resolved by university leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martina. Okay, Blair, your chance to make a final statement.
I think you're muted.
There we go. Thank you so much, Martina. I just want to say how grateful I am. This is something that is not something I would look at as being my direct career trajectory, but something that would allow me to grow as I grow with the University of Aberdeen, with the students. I always say, you know, whether it's a 4-year university, a 2-year university, or a master's degree program that might be 1 or 2 years, the campus changes with the students. And so I think that change is necessary, change is important. I think that this has just been such a gift and an experience to learn so much about the University of Aberdeen, and to be considered. I will say that if I'm rector, I would love to continue working with Martina and Radine, so that way it wouldn't be an all or nothing situation, but something that could be integrated into all aspects of the school. I do plan on coming in the spring, regardless of the outcome, because I think that when something is, you know, brought into your awareness, that it's not something that comes in and goes away like a candle being blown out, but something that can continue to burn and grow and to shape different connections. And so maybe there is something at University of Aberdeen for me that isn't the position of rector, but is in the form of increased learning, increased understanding. But ultimately, I'm so grateful for the students, for the people who brought this together. Thank you so much to you, Daniel, for moderating this discussion. And yeah, thank you for allowing me to be part of this process. I'm truly grateful.
Okay, thank you, Blair, for that final statement. Radine, to finish us off.
Yes, I just want to say again, thank you for this Q&A session. And to me personally, winning this election would mean that I get to continue to do work that I genuinely love and have a passion for. I love working with students and working in the student sphere, and I loved being a student. And I'm really passionate about representing student interests. I think the University of Aberdeen student body is a community that I hold really closely to my heart. And I think I really want current and future students to feel supported by the university and for services on campus to constantly improve and reflect student needs. And just as a final note, that ultimately, please just go out and vote, as it's really important that you have your student voice heard, and these are the opportunities that you get to do so. And so, again, it's such a strong candidate list this year. Either regardless of who you vote for, it's going to be a really strong next 3 years to see student voice really amplified at University Court and other aspects of university management. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Radine. Okay, that concludes the questioning and the examination of the candidates there. Okay, so I would like to say a special thank you to all of you for participating in this. Of course, it's being recorded, so hopefully many students will have an opportunity to see this and to get to know you guys and to be informed about what you would bring to the rector role. Okay, so aside from that, thank you everybody to coming along, everybody watching, everybody who will watch this. Thank you especially to the audience on this one who has been very helpful in providing questions throughout the debate and have been quite lively throughout this entire event. But as well as that, thank you also to the ALSA staff who have arranged this and provided a great deal of the infrastructure to make this happen. Okay, so thank you to everybody who's been involved with this entire process, as I think it's been a very good success. So the only thing that's left to say is that remember, voting is open from tomorrow and it is open throughout the week, and I'm not sure for how long after that it is open, but it is open this week at least. And keep your eye on your student emails because the details will be sent to you there. It finishes on Thursday, so it opens tomorrow and it finishes on Thursday. So keep an eye on your student emails, because all of the details will be sent to you there on how to vote and all the rest of the information that you'll require for that. Okay, so thank you again once again to the candidates. Thank you to everybody else, and that's all from me. See you later on, guys.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you. Bye, Radin. Bye, Blair.
Thank you.